Thank you for joining again. The name of these conversations is Diving Deep. The purpose of this is to let the world see what's on your mind, because I believe that you're really intelligent and you talk about things that I've never heard before, and I think the world should hear them too. So what are we going to talk about today?
So today's topic is going to be the coin shortage. That seems to be a lot of people are noticing that, you know, you're going in different stores and you're trying to make your purchases, and a lot of places are directing you to either pay with, you know, some type of electronic payment or have exact change. A lot of places are claiming, or not, I shouldn't say claiming, but acknowledging that there is a nationwide coin shortage. And the purpose of today's conversation is to get into what's really going on behind that coin shortage, and to basically highlight the fact that there's more to the story than just a shortage of coins. So that's today's topic. So you want me to just dive in?
Well, yep. But I just want to say real quick, I just came from the store and my total was $11.56, and they had no change to give me, so I had to give them $12 and not get my change.
Wow.
Yep. So it's definitely a thing.
So what I want to do first is kind of establish a point in our history where something similar happened before, because history always repeats itself. And if, you know, there's an African proverb that states that when an elder dies, a library of information dies with them. And so if we don't remember our history, we won't even see the warning signs when it's repeating. So in 1929 was the Great Depression. And the reason why I want to relate that to today is to kind of give a whole sequence of events that are actually happening this year, you know. So in 1929, we had the Great Depression, and the thing that kicked off the Great Depression was a stock market crash. And that stock market crash created a whole sequence of events. And, you know, a lot of us have been taught throughout history that the Great Depression happened because there was a stock market and then unemployment rates rose, but not really gave us the true explanation of why those unemployment rates rose. The main contribution or contributing factor to why unemployment rose was because people were going to work. The misconception is that there was not work to do. There was work to be done. People were going to work, but their employers did not have cash to pay them. You know, we're talking about 1929, before there was, you know, debit cards and credit cards and things like that. So, you know, you imagine going to work maybe 1 week, you might take it on the chin and just hope that your employer can pay you the following week. 2 weeks later, okay, this is getting a little annoying. By 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you know, beyond a month, most people aren't going to go for that. And so what happened was people walked off the job because of lack of payment. And that's what caused the bulk of the unemployment. Now, I want to get into the reason why the employers didn't have money, because that relates to where we're at today. So when it comes down to banking, there are three important terms that have to do with banking. The first is fractional, and fractional has to do with the way that banks lend and also the way investors invest. Let's just say you invest $10,000. A bank is legally allowed to loan out your $10,000 10 times, so that your $10,000 can be loaned out up to $100,000. And it may even be worse now with all the changes in laws and things like that going on. So what that does is it sets up our current economy, which is a fiat economy. And what that means is that our money is not backed by gold, it's not backed by silver, it's not backed by anything except for faith, that you believe that a $20 bill is worth $20 in goods. But what we're doing is trading debt back and forth. Those bills are just debt notes. It says it on the bill that this note is legal for all debts. You know, it's legal tender for all debts, both private and public. So we trade debt back and forth. Now, knowing that a bank can loan out your $10,000 10 times and only 10%, so, you know, up to $100,000, or which equals $100,000, that means 90% of the money that's in circulation is not backed by anything. So that's how we get to a fiat currency or a fiat economy through fractional banking. Now, the second phase is contraction or contractional. So what happens is whenever, like I said, this started off with a stock market crash. A stock market crash, most of us believe it happens because certain current events are going on, whether it be the presidential election, whether it be a pandemic, whether it be, just we're going to war or whatever the case may be. And I want you to know that those events do not cause a stock market crash. A stock market crash is always planned. And I'm going to say that very clearly, always planned. It's always intentional. Any fluctuation in the stock market is always deliberate. Okay. So now when the contractional part happens, like we said this before, the Italians, they would always have this phrase, putting a squeeze on them. And it basically what they're doing is they're putting a squeeze on the economy. They put a squeeze on the economy by demanding that loans be paid up, or there's a number of ways that they can do it. But essentially what they're going to do is they're going to squeeze money out of the economy. And how this happens on the stock market is people begin to sell their stocks because they see that a stock market crash is imminent. And so what happens is once people start, checking their stock apps and things like that today, they're going to see, oh man, my Apple stock fell. It's worth $10 less than it was just yesterday. I better get out of this stock before I lose all of my money that I invested in it. And what happens is when people start selling stock, the remaining stock is worth less because the stock market is going down. And the further it goes down, the more people who stay on for the ride lose. Because you may have originally bought your stock, if you bought it when the market was up, you made a bad, financial decision. But if you bought your stock when the stock market was up, then let's just say you bought a stock that was very expensive, $50 a share, and you bought 10 shares, you spent $500. But if that stock falls to $5 per share, you only have $50 left. You lost $450. So now the thing is, when the stock market is crashing, everybody who invested in that stock market invested actual capital. And then you also have people who have 401ks, which are matched by their job, or maybe they're not matched, but that money is also traded. And so you have all this money in a fishbowl. And when the stock market crashes, somehow, some way, that money is extracted from that fishbowl. The money isn't burned. It doesn't just, this is not David Blaine. The money doesn't just magically disappear. The money goes somewhere. And this is why we get into the point of knowing that stock market crashes are intentional, because of whose hands the money ends up in. It ends up in the hands of the banks. That's why stock market crash is beneficial to them, not to us. So, like I said, contractional, squeezing the money out of the economy. Now, how the banks, and why I wanted to relate that is what's going on today. So as money is being extracted out of the economy, those dollars and those cents are being removed from circulation. They don't go back into circulation. This is usually, when we recover from a stock market crash, this is usually when we'll get a new currency. We'll get new 20s or new 5s or new 10s to replace what was extracted from the economy. And also sometimes it's just because, currency does have a life expectancy. You can't just trade dollars forever. Eventually, a lot of them in circulation get torn, worn, burned, lost, whatever the case may be. They need to be replaced. But the bulk of the money is extracted. It's extracted from the economy. The third part of, actually I already got into it, which is extraction. The money, so you have fraction, contraction, and extraction. The extracting part is when the money is physically removed from the economy. So during the Great Depression, the reason why employers did not have the money to pay their employees is because the stock market crashed, which kicked everything off. And by people selling their stocks and by people having to pay mortgage and pay things and pay bills, that money was slowly handed back to the banks, to the point where as the bank is doing their extraction process, there's nothing left in circulation. So the employers could not pay their employees. Employees not getting paid, they walked off the job. Unemployment rates rose. And that's the story that we hear from the Great Depression. Stock market crash, unemployment, people had no jobs. That's the gist of what we generally get. But it was done intentional. So if we fast forward to today, if we go back a few months ago, COVID-19 kicked off with a stock market crash. We got down to a bear market, which is very bad. And after that happened, a lot of people lost money in their 401ks. A lot of people lost jobs and things like that. Now, the way it was done this time was differently. The government did what they called essential businesses needed to close. A lot of businesses needed to close. And when those businesses closed, those employees lost their job. And it's one thing if this would have been a temporary thing and we'd have been out of work for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month or whatever, and then we went back to work. But some people have been out of work now for already 4 months. And so the way it looks is very similar to the Great Depression. We had a stock market crash, and what followed the stock market crash was very high unemployment rates. The unemployment rates now are actually even worse than the Great Depression. The amount of currency extracted from our economy is worse than the Great Depression. And the reason for that is because after the Great Depression, they knew that the economy was going to rebound eventually. I asked you this before. After we went through the Great Depression and there was no money in circulation, what do you think was the thing that got us rolling after the Great Depression?
They printed more money.
That's all they had to do was print money. It wasn't a president who came up with some grand scheme. It wasn't economists who decided this or this thing or that thing or whatever. The only thing that needed to happen was that employers needed money to pay their workers. You pay the workers, people came back, the economy got rolling again. It wasn't an economic boom or industrial boom, as they like to say, that brought us out of the Great Depression. It was just the simple fact that there was money to pay the workers. So now, today, and I also mentioned this part before, but so when this economic crash happened, a lot of people will say, well, how could they have predicted COVID-19, and how could they have predicted that COVID-19 would have had the economic effect that it did on the stock market? Well, the reason why we know that they knew in advance, because back in January, the United States government, certain members had a closed door meeting, and they discussed that one of the impacts of COVID-19 was going to be a stock market crash. And we know this to be true because there were several politicians who were actually being investigated because they had this insider information of a crash coming. And what they did was they sold their stocks to avoid taking the economical hit that the rest of the American citizens took. And then it made headlines for about a week or so, and then we never heard it again. But there were people who had information on a stock market crash coming, and they sold their stocks. And the sad part is that a lot of Americans lost a ton of money, on that stock market crash, and they didn't have that information or that option to sell their stock and avoid taking that hit. And that's just one of the shady things that, people with power and information do. So COVID-19 starts off with a stock market crash, unemployment rates rise. And one of the things that they said early on about COVID-19 was cash. This has been in play all along. And the reason why I'm highlighting these details and basically building a direction that I'm going is because I want you to kind of see where the economy is going and how this part of the plan was ingrained in the process the whole time. So we had a stock market crash, we had unemployment. Now, one of the things they said in the beginning was that COVID-19 or the coronavirus lingers on money. And because money transfers hands so many times, it's one of those items that could cause or increase the spread of coronavirus. So they urged people to use electronic payments. That was part of the scam. You start you're getting conditioned to phase out cash, to not depend on cash, to not have cash on hand, to actually fear cash because you don't know whose hands were on that cash before you got it. And so now we go further, and now we're given more and more options of how we can spend money electronically through apps and through services and things like that. But now today we're at a point where we're saying that there is a national coin shortage. We've been using the same coins forever. Also, earlier this year, there was a six quarter series released where they had 6 new quarters just this year. And one of them had a bat on them, ironically, at the same time that coronavirus was originally assumed to have come from the Wuhan wet market, from somebody making bat suits. I think that's a interesting connection. But anyway, so we had new quarters this year. The dime has been the same pretty much as long as I've been alive. The nickel it's had slight variations, but it's been the same. The penny has changed in composition. It was copper and zinc. Formerly it was almost all copper, but around 1982, I believe, they switched to 97% zinc, and it's copper plated. So a lot of people think that maybe we have a penny shortage because copper is so expensive, but it's only 2.5% copper in a penny. It's just plated. It's not even solid copper anymore. So the question is, where are all the coins? Where did they go? Well, when you're extracting currency out of an economy and the goal is to create a crash, you extract to a certain level, to the point where there's just not enough to circulate. When your goal is to phase out dollars and cents altogether, you get all the dollars out of the economy. When I say all, I mean a lot, 90% or better. And then after you remove 90% of the dollars, you move on to the coins. So what we're experiencing is a coin shortage, but the coin shortage is due to the fact that coins are being extracted from our economy, because where the country is headed to is a cashless society. And that's the next thing that we kind of need to understand what that means. How does that affect us as people, as communities, as Americans? And it's not an American thing. This is something that's being implemented around the world. This is not just a coin shortage in America. It's a worldwide coin shortage. Now you ask yourself, how does America have a coin shortage? And then you go over to another country who uses a completely different currency. How do they also have a coin shortage? Because we're moving towards a one world economy. And that one world economy will be an electronic based currency. So we get the coins out of the way. Now, what are the problems that I see with a electronic currency? For one of the reasons, a lot of people have been speaking on 5G and the concerns with 5G. Well, one of the things that they're going to need 5G and increased internet speeds for is because with an electronic currency in a cashless society, everything you do will be monitored. Everything has a UPC code, and you're going to scan it. And when you scan it and you're going to pay it with your debit card, there's going to be a connection between that UPC code or that product that you bought and your card. And what happens is, when you have data acquisition websites like Google and places like that, they create algorithms on everybody. And Facebook does it also through Facebook, either Facebook or Messenger. And you'll notice sometimes when you go on, you might be talking about something in your house, and you'll say certain keywords. Hey, I'm thinking about buying XYZ. And the next thing you know, when you log into Facebook, you're going to scroll down 4 posts, because every 4 posts on Facebook is an ad. If you haven't noticed that, go back and count it, and you'll notice that every 4 posts is an ad. And you're going to start seeing the things that you were talking about in private, because your phone is listening to you. And why Facebook says that they do that is to help help improve your shopping experiences, to cater your shopping experience to the things that that you're already interested in. So your private communication is being monitored so that they could sell you more stuff that you don't even need anyway. But not only that, these websites, these data acquisition websites create algorithms on people. And basically what they are personality profiles, your likes, your dislikes, your shopping habits, your travel habits, basically everything that makes up who you are goes into that algorithm. And these algorithms know more about you than you do. And so it's a scary thing when every aspect of what you do will be monitored. You know, a lot of people still believe we have certain rights and we have certain privileges that are supposed to be inalienable and they're supposed to be God-given rights, but these rights are being infringed upon because you no longer have the rights and the freedoms that you believe. You can't have the freedoms that you believe when every traffic light has a camera in it, every ATM has a camera in it, everybody's phone has a camera in it, and all these cameras can be linked together and they're all used for surveillance, whether it be audio or video. In a cashless society, there are other things that certain convenient things that go away. You think about when you have if you have a teenage child and the neighbor wants your child to come over and babysit for them for a couple hours, and they're going to give them $50 or whatever. You can't just slide them a $50 bill anymore. It's got to be an electronic payment, and now it's got to be tracked. And now think about how now when every transference of currency between one person and another happens, think about when your 16-year-old doesn't pay taxes on that $50 that they just made for babysitting, because now there's an electronic record of it. There's no more, hey, my mechanic's going to change my brakes and I'm going to give him $40 for it. There's no more of that. It's an electronic payment. And so now, certain things that people used to be able to do and used to be able to get away with, you can't get away with it no more. There's certain jobs that are probably going to be completely phased out. You think about things like the strippers. I don't know if people are making it rain and they throwing debit cards up on the screen or whatever the case may be, or if you got a credit machine that spits out credits. I don't know how that's going to work. I can't imagine that it's going to work the way it works now. There are certain things that we're no longer going to have the option to. There's certain privacies that we're no longer going to have. We give up a lot of control and we give up a lot of privacy when we move into a cashless society. And that's the main problem with that, is our rights will be infringed upon and there's nothing we can do about it because we can't go back. Once we step into a completely cashless society, we will never go back to cash again. And if we're at the point where we're extracting coins out of the economy, we're very close. We're probably already there. We're probably in the final phases of moving towards a cashless society. And so that's why I wanted to connect all of that. All of this was done with a economic crash, a stock market crash, just like the Great Depression. And another thing about a Great Depression is they haven't called what we're in a depression yet. They're still calling it a recession. And usually they will never call a depression what it actually is until after we've come out of it and they label it afterwards. But what we're in right now is worse than the Great Depression. And what we're in right now, you can believe whatever you want about COVID-19, but our government never gives up the opportunity to take advantage of any type of national tragedy events or anything like that. So yeah, COVID-19, whether it happened intentionally or unintentionally, whether it was an accident, whether it came from the wet market, wherever it came from, there were people who had a plan on how to take advantage of it economically, how to bring the downfall of the United States economy into full circle. And that's where we're at right now. We're in the middle of a planned economic crash that's going to bring about the cashless society. And that's why there is no coins. It's not because, there's just people have been throwing coins in fountains, or people have lost coins here, or coins are too expensive to make anymore. It's done on purpose. They're being extracted from the economy on purpose. And so that is what I wanted to talk about today. I feel like that's the pressing information that people need to know and need to understand. So now that you have this information, you can better prepare for your family, your community, and do more research on what needs to happen going forward, what precautions you may need to take, what things you may or may not want to invest in, and things like that. That's why this information, we're a lot closer to it than a lot of us may believe, just because a lot of it hasn't hit our radars yet. But we're there, and it's time that people, we all have to pay attention and all have to do our parts so that, it doesn't hit us like a uppercut. If we can prepare, if we can do our own individual researches and at least find out what it means for us. What things will we be able to do in the future? What things a year from now will we not be able to do? What rights and what privileges or what liberties go out the window in a cashless society? those are the things that are important.
And really
Plenty of,
quickly, I just want to say, just to be clear, there is no running from this, because you can leave America, but it's going to follow you to other countries. So,
right.
yeah.
And that's the thing. This is so another thing I want to hit on really quick, because I want to keep this video as short as possible. In the United States, we have what is called the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, even though it has the name federal in it, it is not a government agency. It's a government contractor, and the name Federal Reserve is no different than Federal Tires or Federal Donuts. It's a title. It is actually a privately owned business that is owned by a group of people, and these people, they have control of several banks, several countries' banks. Actually, to be more specific, there's only maybe 2 countries left that this group of people don't own their country's banks yet. And if you look at, the places that we've gone to war in the last 10 years, you'll notice every place that the United States government went to war with, when we went there, they did not have a central bank. But by the time we left, they did have a central bank. When you go back and you look into Libya and you see what was going on with Gaddafi, Libya did not have a central bank. But by the time the United States pulled out of there, they did. And a central bank is a bank that essentially controls that country's economy. That means that that country is not independent. It is not independently, its economic system is not independent of another country. There's an outside group that controls our economy. And when you control the economy, it doesn't matter who sits in what political office and what their title is. All the purse strings are controlled by somebody outside the country. So from the president on down, there's somebody outside this country that they answer to. And I don't want to get specifics in the names and things like that. I'll save that for another video, because it's definitely worth getting into. But just understand that our economy is being driven the direction that it's being driven in, not because of anything that any individual politician did or anything that Donald Trump did, regardless of what your views on him. And I'm not defending him, I'm not a fan of him. But what I'm saying is there are powers at work that are higher and more hidden than anything that a lot of us know. So the people who are driving this one world economy, they're the people who control countries, several countries at a time. They control the direction that the world is going into. And that's another thing that we have to understand and prepare for as much as we can. I don't want to make the videos too long and bore anybody. There will be more videos to come. We're going to try to stay on top of current events, also do some historical events. We're going to cover some conspiracy theories and things like that.
Can't wait for those.
We're going to dive into a wide variety of topics. This was more so to ease into it and hit on a current event. Hope everybody enjoyed the video. I hope, even if you didn't enjoy it, I hope you got something from it that was useful, something that you may not have known, or, something that confirms some of the suspicions that some people may have had. And, just check us out in our future videos. We'll keep them coming.
Yes. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and share these videos with your friends and family. Thank you.
Yes.